Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This is episode 4. Do you have a big idea or dream that you feel like you need to get moving on? Or do you feel that dream is a little bit stuck inside of you? I brought my good friend and colleague, Melanie Moore, to the show today to help you with just that issue. She's the UK's leading vision board expert and an award-winning coach. And what she does with her clients is she helps them get clear on their big vision. She helps them commit to it. And then she helps them take the very big steps that are needed to make those visions a reality. She's one of the loveliest people I've ever met, and she tells the best stories. So you're going to hear a lot of her stories in the episode, and you're going to learn about the techniques that she uses to help her clients to thrive and to really live to their potential. I think you're going to be dreaming bigger about your own life by the time you get through the episode too. Let's go listen to the episode. Hi, I'm Dr. Christine Lee, and I'm a psychologist and a procrastination coach. I've helped thousands of people move past procrastination and overwhelm so they could begin working to their potential. In this podcast, you're going to learn powerful strategies for getting your mind, body, and energy to work together so that you can focus on what's really important and accomplish the goals you want to achieve. When you start living within your full power, you're going to see how being productive can be easy and how you can create success on demand. Welcome to the Make Time for Success podcast. Hi, everyone. I have the pleasure of welcoming the wonderful Melanie Moore to my show today. Melanie is a dear friend, treasured mentor, and just an all-around awesome woman. So I can't wait for you to meet her. Welcome to the show, Melanie.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute honor and my pleasure.
Great. Let's see. I know we were just saying that we have so much to talk about with each other and that I very much know the quality and the nature of Melanie's work. Melanie, could you start us off by telling us your story and sharing with our listeners how you came to be a mindset and manifestation coach?
Oh gosh, I always wonder how far to go back when people ask me this question. I guess something I kind of haven't spoken about so much in previous interviews is that I often just go back to saying, I've been doing this for about a decade or so, but actually there's a whole nother kind of like big chunk of my life, which I never really gets to mention. So I'll very briefly just recap, my journey. I'll try not to keep you for too long, but I started off my working career as a journalist. And actually prior to that, I was modeling from quite a young age as a teenager. Then I went into journalism. I worked at the BBC. And from that point, my career took a bit of a switch. I then went into the corporate world for the next 10 years. And then I got married, had children. And when my children were very small, actually after my daughter was born, I quickly realized that I didn't want to go back to the corporate world. I wanted to start my own business. Now, I'd always had an interest in holistic therapies. And I think this really actually, it all started when I was pregnant with my son, who's just turned 16. So I'd say this is when my switch happened, but that switch took a few years to transition. And when I was pregnant, that's when I started doing yoga classes. I also read a book called The Gentle Birth Experience, which I would say was absolutely life-changing for me. It was when I read this book, I learned about visualization and I learned about kind of creating the birth experience I wanted, which was kind of like what I do now for every other aspect of my life. But I was introduced to these concepts through this book. So for the last few months of my first pregnancy, I visualized the dream birth. I wrote out my birth plan. And I ended up having an incredible birth experience. I had a water birth with very little pain relief. when I first got pregnant, I thought I'd have a cesarean. I thought there's no way, just get me through this birthing process as quickly as possible. But I had a completely holistic, natural, gentle birth experience. And exactly the same thing happened with my daughter. Followed the principles again, did the visualizations, and something woke up in me in terms of spirituality after having my children, because after I gave birth to my daughter, I then trained as I was attuned as a Reiki healer. And I then went on to train as a reflexologist, partly kind of for my own learning, because I was really interested in alternative therapies. But then because I knew I didn't want to go back to my corporate career, I thought perhaps this was something that I could do as a business as well, be a holistic therapist on the side in my own hours while the children were either sleeping or when they started school. So that's kind of what happened. And then shortly after training those therapies, it was for the first few years of my holistic therapy business, I specialized primarily with supporting women through pregnancy, childbirth, postpartum. And then I was introduced to EFT, also known as tapping. And I found that my tapping was the quickest shift that helped my clients with anxiety, with birth trauma, with fear of childbirth. And that's kind of how the tapping kind of came into my business. So I'll pause there for a moment. Have you got any other questions there before I just continue?
Well, lovely. Thank you so much for sharing the details. I know I have questions about your background and the back history. And I just wanted to say, I don't think I realized that you were in the pregnancy and delivery space, and that that's actually how you connected with tapping, or that was the zone of time in your life where you started to use tapping. I think maybe the best next question for our audience, so that they can understand what we're talking about, could you explain tapping in a little bit more detail and what that is?
Sure. Well, tapping is commonly known as EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And those who've come across it have probably found that it's good for things like fears, phobias, stress, anxiety. They're the common things that people go to see an EFT practitioner for. And for me, I found that it was wonderful for helping people with fear of childbirth, with birth trauma, and just to feel relaxed during labor. And that's why I, really loved it as a therapy, because people would come to see me for a reflexology, a Reiki session, because they wanted to feel relaxed and relieve their stress and all that kind of stuff. But what EFT does is then you have this tool that you can do on your own. So what EFT actually is, it's tapping. Literally, we are tapping on acupressure points, mostly on our face and on our upper body. And these are actually acupressure points, which are linked to Chinese medicine. It's often described as a cross between acupuncture and psychology, where as we tap on these pressure points and say positive statements or release any negative emotions we may be feeling, it sends calming signals to our brain, and it literally rewires our brain as well. So we can shift our emotional state from one of fear, anxiety, trauma to one of calm, feeling good, feeling positive in a really short space of time. So it's also, I just kind of shared recently that there's a big airline here in the UK called EasyJet, and they run a fear of flying course. And on day one of the course is actually a whole day of tapping. They have specialist phobia people, practitioners, to help people go through their trauma and use tapping. So whilst it might sound a little bit woo-woo and a bit, oh my goodness, this all sounds a bit, weird. And trust me, yes, it does look and feel weird the very first time you try it. When a big company like EasyJet uses it as part of their fear of flying training, they've obviously done their research to show that it works. It takes away, I think, the whole woo element, and it's proven it really does work, and it's amazing.
I agree. and validate and back up what Melanie said about the fact that it's very powerful and tapping is very amazing. Melanie taught me inside one of her programs about tapping, and I had the experience of having her guide me through the tapping process several times. And it really is something that it's a process where you, in some ways, you get to decide where you want, how you want to feel at the end of the experience, that you want to move yourself from X to Y. So X is the current stressful, negative, unhelpful, or unwanted part of yourself, the part that you accept is around, but one that you would like to say, I'm moving on from you. And then you move to Y. And I think Melanie and other tappers kind of take your own language and fashion that into the tapping script and then guide you into, okay, here's your new identity. Because we know we wish for that new identity, but we're just missing a couple of steps. And I think tapping is the bridge. So thank you, Melanie, for describing that. Did I do the process justice?
I think so, yeah. And another example of that could be because you say, yeah, we do get to choose. And there is a method within tapping called the choices method. It was founded by a lady called Patricia Carrington, who sadly passed away, I think, last year. But we get to choose how we feel. And we all have that choice at any time. I think a lot of us don't realize that. We get quite reactive to our situation or whatever life throws at us. And life can throw all sorts of things at us. So, for example, if you're feeling stressed, anxious, and worried, which is not a good state to be in, you can choose to feel calm, hopeful, and optimistic in one round of tapping. Is a choice. I would say to go from something like fear or desperation to woohoo, happy days, excitement, and positivity. Probably hard to do in one round of tapping, but you can guide yourself up the emotional scale gently, bit by bit, through each subsequent round of tapping.
Yes, wonderful. That's a wonderful description of moving yourself up the scale. And Melanie, I know you tap daily. Am I correct?
I do. I tap for myself, often to start the day, and I'm often tapping with my clients and my groups. So yeah, I'd say most days I tap, but I do try to make it part of my morning routine. And obviously, we talk about manifestations and that sort of thing. That is my personal favorite way to use tapping, because that is something that's not spoken about so much, how to use tapping to help you manifest things.
Yes. And that is very much how I connected with you. And I think your work is magnificent because Melanie, as you can tell, she's so eloquent and she's got a way with words and she's so caring too. It's a wonderful mix of talents and skills. So tell us how blending tapping with manifestation then helped you to expand your career and expand your reach.
Okay, so rewinding back again to the time I was a holistic practitioner, I also was really massively into personal development. I was reading books on the law of attraction and spirituality. And it was around, and actually, it was when I trained to become a reflexologist. My tutors at the time also told us about this book called The Secret. And I'd never heard of the law of attraction. I'd never heard that your thoughts can create your reality. It was just a brand new concept to me. So I read The Secret and I was taught about basically ask, let's call it the universe, for what you want and allow the universe to deliver to you the things you want. And for me, it was just like, oh, this sounds exciting. I love the sound of this. And I went into it wholeheartedly with openness and curiosity, which are the states that you need to be in for this stuff to work. Now, if you're the sort of person who say, what a load of rubbish, complete nonsense, never going to work, then it won't work for you. So I encourage anyone to, if you're new to these concepts, to come into it with a state of playfulness, curiosity, and I wonder what this is all about. So at the time I had a client base of people, mainly women, who obviously women come to see me with birth and pregnancy things. I then thought, wouldn't it be fun to do these personal development circles. And one of the first things I did was to do a vision board workshop, because there's a whole chapter in The Secret about creating vision boards. And I thought that this would be a fun way to get people together, to connect, and to, just how a vision board works is you get a piece of cardboard and you start putting on that card things that you want in your life, experiences you want to have, travel experiences, dream home and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a fun activity to do. So that's kind of how the next evolution of my business started. I started doing these vision board workshops with my existing clients. And it wasn't really until a couple of years later, so I'm thinking like probably about 6 or 7 years ago now, actually maybe even longer, it was about 9 years ago that I started my first vision board workshop. But it wasn't until maybe a few years later that I put the tapping with the vision boards. And this is when I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, there is so much more to visualization, manifesting than just sticking out pictures on a piece of cardboard. Because let's face it, anybody can do that. But I've realized that there are lots of beliefs and old stories and all this stuff that we hold on to that stops our manifestations from happening. It stops us from realizing the things we want. And this is when I started to become really fascinated with how we can use tapping to let go of limiting beliefs we may be holding on to as to why we can't have a different experience of life. So by limiting beliefs, they could be anything along the lines of, oh gosh, I've got such a blank here. Limiting beliefs. You want to chip in? Yeah.
Yes. I'm happy to. I know you helped me to find a limiting belief of my own during a tapping session where I remember it was a moment for me where you kind of, I think maybe towards the end, you just said, Christine, you need to believe in your own authority. And, I would not have spoken to myself like that. So, because I live in my oftentimes fear that I do lack authority. So it was so powerful to have you listen to me, to have you tap with me, and then for you to just bottom line it, just to tell me, Christine, this is what you need to believe in more. And I think any support that we can get in that way, that supports our positive belief in ourselves or our desire for a better future for ourselves, or a future that doesn't include those old beliefs and old stories that don't help us, I think is a good project. So I think you do very, very good, positive, uplifting work.
Thank you. Yeah. And it's an ongoing journey of self-inquiry, to asking ourselves, something that I often share with my clients and I speak to my members about is to check in with yourself. Ask yourself, how are you feeling? And check in with yourself several times a day. And if you're not feeling anything other than good, it's often because there's a story that we've got running in the back of our minds. And there is some kind of dialogue that's going in our head that's creating the emotion in our body. And if it's not a good emotion, it's like, okay, what am I telling myself? And often it's to do with stress and overwhelm and feeling that there's not enough time, feeling, pressured. And again, it's just a story. And all we have to do is to change the language, to tell ourselves a different story, let go of the old story. And we can do that really quickly with a round of tapping. The first part of tapping could be to let go of the story. Then the next part is to tap the new story in instead. So if we relate this to vision boards, again, I know this is something you've been helping me with, something we've been talking about, is my own journey to writing a book. And there's been all sorts of stories I've been telling myself as to why I've been procrastinating over this book. Again, it's the time. And again, do I feel that, who would want this book anyway? And it's having a bit of a chat with myself and telling myself, actually, I know this book will benefit people. I know that it can help a lot of people. And I'm doing people a disservice by not publishing the book. And as you've helped me to reframe. So, yeah, there's all sorts of things. And I think just a very simple one would be the relationship that we all have with time. And many of us, myself included, we tell ourselves, I don't have the time for this, or there's not enough hours in the day. And if we keep telling ourselves that story, that's a reality we're going to get. So when I'm consciously aware that I do that, I will tell myself a better story, that I have all the time I need to do all the things I want. I will literally tap with that phrase for 2, maybe 3 minutes, and it's just reset my relationship with time. And it's weird. It's almost as if by magic, I've created time to do what I need to do because I've told myself a new story. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And I think since I started working with you, which is now several years ago, I feel like my own sense of time has changed. I think my procrastination journey, recovering from procrastination, gave me real time. And then working with you added on kind of experience time, where I feel like if I'm enjoying myself and if I'm being mindful about where I am and what I'm feeling, I don't feel time as a limitation anymore, which is the biggest gift. So I want to thank you for enabling me to find these ways of working with my own brain and spirit so that I feel like I can produce anything I want and I can make things happen and I can create a podcast and invite good friends on. Who knew this was a possibility? But I think you help us all understand that anything you can envision is your possibility, that all of this is very, very doable. You just have to, you have to think, you have to feel, you have to plan, you have to make the vision, and then you have to go. You have to make the time, you have to make the vision come alive. So thank you for being the model and the literal model and the person who I think you're creating a craft as you go along. And I know most recently you've developed a whole other technique and trademarked it. Could you tell us about that concept?
Yeah, absolutely. So this kind of came about last year. And I must admit, although it's now got an official name and I've trademarked it, I've been doing this for years. It's not a new thing. I just thought, actually, through speaking to a friend and a mentor of mine, she said, well, you need to trademark this process. So what it is called transformational neural technique. And for me, it's kind of the next level of blending visualization with EFT, because both of these things separately transform our neural pathways anyway. If we can visualize something for long enough, we hear about golfers and athletes visualizing the gold medal or the hole in one or whatever outcome they want. And EFT is the same. The tapping, it changes your neural pathways through the power of words and, tapping on your acupressure points. But when you can combine the two together, tapping on the vision of the future of the outcome that you want, firstly, I do this 2 ways, through helping my clients to let go of old stories. Sometimes you can even do it by looking at situations and circumstances in the past. For example, one of my clients, she spoke about, she remembered very, very clearly, first day at a new school and being bullied, being laughed at by the girls in the playground. And it was left a kind of a traumatic imprint of a memory in her subconscious mind. While she could recollect the memory on a conscious level, subconsciously, this story then went on to affect her life by feeling excluded, by feeling that she didn't really fit in, even as an adult in other situations, feeling like the new girl, feeling a bit behind. And, through a few sessions, we realized that this kind of that was the root story where it happened. So we did a little visualization exercise on just changing that whole story, that she envisioned a situation where her friends welcomed her and she was laughing and playing, almost to kind of reset the memory in her subconscious brain. And then we did a tapping session for forgiveness and release and healing. And then once she'd kind of created a vision for things that she wanted to manifest and create in the future, we were then able to do some tapping around the manifestation and the outcome that she wanted. And something I do actually in a group on my vision board experiences is once you've made the vision board, I will then help you to kind of, through a guided visualization, the TNT process is to help you to, I call it the vision embodiment process, where we embody the vision of the future you, of the situation, of the outcome that you want, whilst tapping along to some really positive, empowering phrases that will rewire your brain through the visualization and tapping. So it's almost like a double whammy of neurological transformation. So yeah, that's the process.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for explaining that. As I'm listening, I'm thinking to myself that you must be astounded, even though you believe in the process and the energy shifts that we can have in our lives, but it must be astounding to watch your clients make leaps in their life.
It's incredible.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And every time it happens, even through, my YouTube videos, I've loads of videos on my YouTube channel, and these are free resources that anybody can access. The transformations people have just got from my YouTube videos, they blow me away every time I read one of the comments. So, I'm happy to share one of the YouTube videos I have is to tap for an extra 5,000. I call it pounds a month, but you can change that to dollars. However, people said, no, why would I want dollars? 5,000 pounds is much better. So, tapping to increase your income by 5,000 pounds a month. And I actually originally created this video. Funnily enough, it was for myself. Actually, somebody asked me to create it. One of my close friends, one of my peer, I'm in a peer-based mastermind, or I was, and she said, could you create a tapping video for 50,000 pounds a month? And I was like, well, that's just ridiculous, isn't it? Not that I didn't believe it was possible, but I'd never seen a video like it before. So I did. I created a private video. I put it as an unlisted video on YouTube, and it was just for me and my fellow, peer-based mastermind group. And it was to tap for 50,000 pounds a month consistently as a consistent income level. And my friend said to me, you need to make this public. I was like, I'm not making this public. I haven't even accomplished this as a goal for myself. So I feel like a fraud, blah, blah, blah. But I do actually share on the video that it takes a good 68, maybe even 90 days to hardwire a new belief into your subconscious programming. And and it's something that has to be done regularly. It's something you've got to become kind of obsessed over. And so in order to kind of have these manifestations happen, it takes time and consistency to rewire this new programming in. But I also realized that it's quite a leap going from being nowhere near that level of income to 50,000 pounds. I then created another tapping video to increase your income by 5,000 pounds a month, which is, I don't have anything. Some people say, can you do something in between? Could you do something like for 10,000? And I probably will do that soon. But at the moment, you've got two options, 5K or 50K. Both are available to watch on my YouTube channel. But the comments I've had on the 5K video have been incredible, because a lot of people said, you know what, 50,000 pounds, way out of my comfort zone. Can't see how that's going to happen. I think it's when you don't believe in it, when you can't see that it's possible, there's no point tapping for 50K a month. You're better off getting started with an additional 5K a month in order to feel comfortable with getting to that goal first. And if you just check out that video and you look at the comments and the number of people who've like, oh my goodness, this works. I've been tapping with you consistently for 30, 60, 90 days now, and it works. Because what you're doing is you're tapping in a new belief. And it's a brand new belief that it's possible for me to create an extra £5,000 a month. It's just a belief. And if you believe that to be true, the universe is going to present you with money-making ideas, with opportunities, with money coming out of the blue, where you're opening up channels of abundance when you start to tell yourself, I'm open to receiving an extra £5,000 a month. I don't know where it's going to come from, but I'm allowing it to happen. Rather than most people when it comes to money is when they start thinking, well, they live through paycheck to paycheck and they only see one channel of income and they can't see any other possibilities or how money can come out the blue. But when you ask yourself a question, I wonder how I could make an extra £5,000 a month. It's incredible how things just happen. They really do. And these are what I love to see in my clients. I've had one client in my membership community this month. She shared that she wanted to manifest $20,000 to clear some debts. And she didn't want to go into the new year with still owing these debts. And she literally had her best month ever. And I said to her after she shared in the group, she made $28,000 in a month. And she said, I put it all down to these new money mantras, tapping on these positive phrases like money comes to me out the blue. One of the tapping videos is actually, this isn't available on my YouTube channel. This is one of my private videos. It's large sums of money come to me easily, effortlessly, and consistently in wonderful and fun ways. Now, imagine if that is a fundamental belief for you, that's going to be your reality, that large sums of money will come to you easily, effortlessly, and consistently in wonderful and fun ways. But yeah, sorry, I've really gone on there a bit. Let me stop and let me...
No. That's wonderful, because I think oftentimes our wishes are connected to money, and that there are ways in which our mindset can block the introduction of more money into our bank accounts and into our income. And I love how you explain that you just kind of have to reopen yourself up to your curiosity about how flow happens in your life and how things can be introduced into your life and your access to the things that you want in your life. Our first reaction might be, well, that's ridiculous, 50,000 pounds, but it's possible. You cannot argue that it's not possible, because there is the money in the world.
And of course, we've seen other people do that. We see people making more than £50,000 a month. We both know people who make extraordinary amounts of money. So of course it's possible. I'm firmly of the belief when you see other people do it, that it's entirely possible for yourself as well. So yeah, the easiest reframe of all, which we can all start doing just by shifting our language, is when we find ourselves saying, I can't, even saying the sentence, I can't see how this is going to happen, or it's not possible, just change that to, what do I need to do to make this happen? Or how can I find a way to make this happen? Just shifting your can't from how can I is so powerful.
Our listeners can tell how much I've learned from you. And I want to encourage our listeners to continue following Melanie. Melanie, I'm sure your journey is going to continue to expand and be beautiful. So follow Melanie. She's mentioned already her YouTube channel and her membership. Melanie, can you give us more details about how our followers can follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my YouTube channel is Melanie Moore EFT. I'm also quite active on Instagram and Facebook. I am Melanie Moore. I do have a membership community which opens up a couple of times a year, but this is usually on the back of my vision board days, which I do them twice a year in January. We've just had one, I think. Time recording, it's just coming up, but there'll also be another one in June. So plenty of time to get to know me before the next one.
Yes. Wonderful. So thank you so much, Mel, for joining me on the show and telling us all about yourself and your beautiful work.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and wishing you so much success with this podcast. I can't wait to have a fabulous new podcast to listen to.
Oh, thank you so much. I know our listeners have already benefited. So thank you so much.
Pleasure.
All right. We'll see everyone next time. Thanks so much for listening. Take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make Time for Success podcast. If you enjoyed what you've heard, you can subscribe to make sure you get notified of upcoming episodes. You can also visit our website, maketimeforsuccesspodcast.com, for past episodes, show notes, and all the resources we mention on the show. Feel free to connect with me over on Instagram too. You can find me there under the name Procrastination Coach. Send me a DM and let me know what your thoughts are about the episodes you've been listening to. And let me know any topics that you might like me to talk about on the show. I'd love to hear all about how you're making time for success. Talk to you soon.